There's a quiet sentence that many people in their 20s carry around but rarely say out loud. I feel like I'm always behind. Not dramatically behind, not in a way that anyone else might notice, just a subtle, constant feeling that no matter how hard you work, the ground beneath you never quite feels stable. For many people in Gen Z, the experience of money isn't just about numbers. It's a feeling, a background anxiety, a sense that adulthood arrived with fewer guarantees than the generations before them. And strangely, this feeling often appears even in people who are technically doing fine. They have jobs, some are educated, some even earn more than their parents did at the same age. But the emotional experience of wealth, the feeling of security, has quietly shifted. Part of the reason lives inside the brain's comparison system. Human beings rarely measure success in isolation. The brain constantly scans the environment and asks a simple question: where do I stand compared to everyone else? In earlier generations, comparison happens locally. You compared yourself to neighbors, coworkers, or people in your town. The circle was small, and most people were living within roughly the same economic reality. But Gen Z grew up inside a completely different comparison environment. Their reference group isn't just their neighborhood, it's the entire internet. Every day, their brain absorbs thousands of tiny signals about lifestyle: apartments in New York with perfect lighting, 23-year-olds launching startups, influencers traveling across Europe on a random Tuesday afternoon. Even when people understand intellectually that these images are curated, the emotional brain doesn't process them as exceptions, it processes them as the norm. Over time, this quietly resets the brain's idea of what normal life should look like. So someone with a stable job and a small apartment doesn't feel stable. They feel like they're barely keeping up with an invisible standard that seems to be rising every day. And that's only one piece of the puzzle. There's also the economic landscape Gen Z walked into. For previous generations, the early years of adulthood often came with a sense of gradual upward motion. Housing was more attainable relative to income, education didn't carry the same long-term financial weight, career paths were slower but they felt predictable. The psychological effect of predictability is powerful. When people believe the future is stable, the brain relaxes. It tolerates temporary struggle because it assumes progress is coming. Gen Z entered adulthood during a very different period. They watched the aftershocks of the financial crisis, a global pandemic, rising housing costs, and a labor market that shifts faster than most people can plan for. Even if someone is employed and earning, the brain still detects instability, and the brain responds to instability in a specific way. It stays alert. Not necessarily panicked, but always slightly on edge. It's the difference between standing on solid ground and standing on a moving platform. Even if you're technically safe, your muscles never fully relax. There's also something more subtle happening beneath the surface. Many Gen Z adults grew up during a time when identity and self-worth became closely tied to personal achievement, school performance, personal branding, online presence, productivity. From a young age, life quietly became a series of metrics: grades, followers, opportunities, experiences. When the brain learns to track life through metrics, it naturally begins to track money the same way, not just as survival, but as proof. Proof that things are working, proof that you're progressing, proof that you're not falling behind. The result is that financial insecurity becomes psychological insecurity. And this is why two people with the same salary can feel completely different about their lives. One person feels stable, the other feels like they're barely staying afloat. Objectively, their circumstances might look similar, but psychologically, they are living inside very different stories. Gen Z isn't necessarily poorer in every measurable way. In some cases, incomes are higher, access to information is greater than ever before, and opportunities are more global than ever. But the emotional environment surrounding money has changed. The comparisons are wider, the expectations are higher, the future feels less predictable. And when the brain combines those three elements, comparison, pressure, and uncertainty, it produces a very specific emotional experience: the quiet sense of always being behind. Not because someone failed, not because they made the wrong decisions, but because the psychological landscape of adulthood has shifted in ways that are easy to overlook. What looks like financial insecurity on the outside is often something deeper on the inside. A generation trying to build stability in a world that feels like it keeps moving the finish line.